Okay, the recording has started. Hello, Commander Pike. How are you today?
Look, I'm fine, Captain Hollows. I've been watching Babylon 5 a lot recently.
And how is it? How is
And
it? Because I do still have to watch that.
so funnily enough, I recently watched an episode with a similar premise to this one that we're about
Mm-hmm.
to cover. So, and I will say Babylon 5, I think does it better, but I'm also not big on this concept in general. It's like, oh, well, like, you know, plus it's weird. The Babylon 5 episode where it did it, it's like, it did it better, but it also annoyed me because of who it afflicted and the ramifications of it. But yeah, we can get back to this episode now, where the ramifications are, it's the end of the episode, everything's back to normal.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. So this is another one of those technically skippable episodes. It's not
Mm-hmm.
like necessary in either way. There is probably about two or three really good character moments in this episode. They
Mm-hmm.
have a new introduced character that I do really like. I can't recall. Let's see, what was her name? Kajada is her name. I like her
Yeah.
character a lot. But other than that, it's like nothing in this episode is really major. I mean, I would say
Yeah.
watch it. I think I just did a rewatch of it. There is one major plot hole, but it kind of falls into some of the kind of crazy nonsense technology babble of Star Trek,
Yeah.
where it's like,
Yeah.
okay, I guess that's just how it works, but that seems like a really dumb way to make it work that way.
Yeah.
Either way,
Actually, speaking of Babylon 5, everyone, if you want to watch DS9 Babylon 5 at the same time, if you ever wonder, like, why didn't they bring back this character? They're probably in the other show at the moment. I almost guarantee.
well,
It has
I
been a
remember.
great time.
I believe there was a pretty big controversy regarding Babylon 5 and DS9.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know
But
if we mentioned
uh,
it, but it's basically the creator of Babylon 5
claimed that he
was.
took the pitch to the company that made DS9, Paramount or whatever. They rejected it, and then they made DS9, and he's like, "Look at these similarities. I'm pretty sure they stole like my concept and such." Now, I would say, generally speaking, at the surface level, yeah, there's definitely similarities, but beyond that, they go in different directions with it, if that makes sense. That like let me put it like this, Hollywood. If we want to tackle that issue, we should make it a whole thing after you watch Babylon 5. I'll
Yeah, I
put it
mean,
like that.
so what I would kind of say is I'd wonder how much it really tackles that issue. A lot of the episodes we've had in this first season are very standalone one-offs. It's based
Hmm.
on a pre-existing franchise of Star Trek. I
Hmm.
guess having not seen Babylon 5, I would kind of say there's a pretty high bar that you kind of need to prove here to kind of get me to believe that this is,
Yeah.
actually some sort of ripoff and not just look at the time period, two sci-fi series with generally like similar like budgets and actors tends to have a lot of the similar like overlap in terms of their presentation. I can believe
Yeah.
that.
And even if DS9 did rip off Babylon 5 committed the greater sin of stealing Grilka from us. God, I'm going to Grilka,
Well,
the
well,
best Klingon.
true. That is probably true. I do like her plot line probably the best, just because I think it shows an interesting side of Klingons. But
Mm.
we could probably get to this episode, and this episode opens up. I was rewatching it, and I just had to laugh because this opening is absolutely hilarious. So it starts off with Kira and Bashir inside the runabout. They are coming back. Kira's just like, I've never seen anything like this. And Bashir's just acting very nonchalant. She's like, she was dead, and you brought her back to life. And then Bashir just starts absolutely patting himself on the back like the biggest smug expression. You've watched Rick and Morty, right, Pike?
Oh yeah, yeah,
There's an episode
yeah.
where I'm trying to remember his name. Um, Beth and Jerry, they go to a
Gary.
planet to help them overcome the relationship drama. And at
Oh
one
yeah,
point,
sorry.
yeah, and at one point, like the so they put Beth in a machine that she creates like her view of Jerry, a version of Jerry that like is created based on how she views him. And when he's acting very arrogant at one point, just a bunch of arrogant patting on the back Jerry's come out with his face on his own shirt. And he's just like, "Hey, Jerry, you're so great, Jerry. You're so handsome, Jerry." And that's all they are. And that's exactly what Bashir's here. I want to read out what he says, where Kira just says, "I was very impressed, Doctor." And Bashir then goes on, "As well you should have been. I'm impressed with myself on this one, actually. I can't imagine what other doctor would even consider examining the scapular nodes for parasitic infection. I just seem to have a talent, I suppose, a vision that sees past the obvious, around the mundane, right to the target. Fate has granted me a gift, Major, a gift to be a healer." I'd punch him. Like,
You-
holy crap! It is the most self-flating
to be
thing
fair,
ever.
to be fair, Kira opened herself to it. She has herself to blame. She should know at this point. This is what Bashir's
Look,
like,
don't get
and
me
it's like,
wrong. Bashir's like this a lot. Like we've seen other episodes. We opened up the one of the previous episodes with him talking about how like the struggle of doing his like Starfleet medical school exams.
ah,
And it's
yeah,
like, at least in that context, he's trying to impress a woman, right? It's like, oh, he's acting arrogant and haughty because he's trying to show off his accomplishments to some woman he's trying to woo. Fine, like
mhm.
that's fair, but it does fit in character. This feels like almost what you would write as a Bashir parody. This would be like if O'Brien was trying to mock Bashir. This is what he would say. "I have a gift, I suppose,
Okay.
God
First
given."
off, you say that as if O'Brien would accurately say the medical terms
Well, true, but that would
for
be
his
that would
parody.
that's what will make it sort of even funnier. And it's just, oh my god, it's such a ridiculous opening. I love it. I absolutely love it. But it is a bit silly. And I need to double check something on the oh no, it's not appearing. Oh no, the text. Let's see. I'm also getting some feedback from you.
Oh well, that sounds like a you problem.
Well, it's a video
Um,
problem. It
their
doesn't
output
have
is down to
it
eighty
didn't
percent.
it didn't have the for some reason the episode number, which I put it there. It just for some reason I guess it was the same color as like the background or something. I don't know how to do that. I don't know what's wrong. Okay, there we go. And then it's just this is what episode number is this? This is episode 9, I believe.
Mm, yeah, should be 9.
Okay.
Uh,
And I can
no,
find
it's eighth in terms of produced and released. Oh wait, yeah, because Emissary is a two-parter. Or
so
no, I
I'm
don't
I'm
know.
I'm I'm legitimate.
I
Okay,
don't
hold on.
know.
I'm legitimately annoyed because I don't have the font saved anymore. What was the font for
For
Star
wh-
Trek called? Crap.
I don't know. You made the thing. I don't.
I had
Uh,
this. I had this. I'm totally getting better at this, guys. I'm not just spiraling down a tunnel of failure. Uh,
man, I
I
love
don't I don't
how
think I don't
when
think this is it, but I'm gonna use this as the number instead, and now I'm gonna have this big 9 in the corner. Can make it a little bit smaller.
I love how as soon the first video we do after you're out of session for your job is the one where we have problems. I love how that's how it goes.
Hey, hey,
I,
hey! We have problems every episode.
no. You just went on a 2-minute tangent about the font. It's like the font's not that important. It's not that important.
Well, it looks
Um,
terrible now. So I'm going to there. Now everyone can see it. It looks really dumb, but that's what we have now. So we're gonna live with it. Anyway, uh, after Bashir is done talking about how great he is, and Kira makes the joke. Oh yeah, the line where she's like, "I feel privileged to be in your presence," and Bashir's like, "Glad to have you along." Holy crap! I just
mhm,
slap him. He deserves it at this point.
hmm,
But they get
yeah.
a alert. Kajada says that she is part of a Kobliad transport, and that they've had a critical power linkage explode, and they need assistance. So this is where we sort of get into the the actual plot of the episode. They go and rescue these
Hmm.
people on the ship. Uh,
Hmm.
then Bashir detects another life form in like what is I assume a holding cell, and he's going in there to help out. The slowly kind of unconscious, like she's kind of near unconscious. Uh, Kajada, she's basically saying, "Don't let him escape." He started the fire to escape. Bashir goes in there and he sees this guy unconscious. He goes to try and help him, and then the guy grabs his neck and says, "Make me live," before he dies. And Bashir does a scan. It's like, "Yep, he's dead." So it's a bit of a weird opening. But
Hmm.
that's where we get to the plot. So let's see here. The Kajata, she wakes up in the medical ward, and this is why I kind of like her. She's a very focused character. When we learn a little bit more about her, like everything about her is like it's a little it's dialed up to 11, but it makes a lot of sense why it's dialed up to 11.
Hmm.
She wakes up, and pretty much the first thing she's asking is like, "Where is he?" Like,
Yeah.
and Bashir's just kind of confused. He's like, "Your prisoner? Well, he's dead." And she's just like, "Are you certain?" He's like, "Well, yeah, you were the only survivor." She's like, "Where's his body?" He's like, "It's in stasis." She's like, "I want to see it." And she demands to see it now. And this is where she's basically saying like, "What tests have you done to confirm he's dead?" He's basically saying all the standard stuff, and she's asking for some sort of ridiculous stuff. Like she asks for a
Hmm.
retinal imaging scan, like she's doing the scans herself, and then she finishes this scene by stabbing him in the chest. And
Just gotta
this is
make
where
sure.
she confirms that this man is a huge criminal. The horrors he's responsible in her world are like absolutely just the worst thing ever. She's hunted him for 20 years, and he's
Hmm.
brilliant. But he's brilliant, and he has a way of escaping death all the time. He's faked his death more times than she can tell, even though she's tracked him for 20 years. And anyone who like proclaims him dead, they don't live to regret the mistake. So, they're really presenting an interesting dynamic here where you have this is like the classic criminal constable sort of dynamic where the criminal's now dead and the constable's just like, I don't
Hmm.
believe it. I don't believe until his
Hmm.
body is atomized, I will not believe it. And even then, I'm checking each atom.
When your life force lives even through the atoms.
No, God.
Oh
I mean, it's just
God.
it's very well acted, and I very much believe how much she almost kind of fears this man. Like he's dead, and she's like, he could be anywhere. He could be even in this very room. But there's also just a lot of anger, of course. So I think her character's pretty good throughout the whole episode. And then we get like another
Hmm.
scene, which this scene, all it really does is some classic Odo Quark, bickering, with a confirmation by I think Odo that pretty much everyone on the station wants to bang Jedzia. Like, yeah,
Yeah.
I guess so. I mean, I understand it, but it's funny how often they basically say, "Yeah, Jessica's like the perfect woman that everyone wants." I'm like, bro, I don't know. I mean, she's attractive, but I'm sitting here like, I don't know if I can get past the weird symbiote. I mean, we're just
Uh,
fresh off the Dax episode, and I just be thinking like, huh, this woman, she has like the consciousness of like 4 or 5 guys in there too. I'm like,
I mean, to be fair, is it really that different from dating a woman who has schizophrenia?
true, true.
Yeah, yeah. There you go.
I can't, I
I'm
can't, I
correct.
can't, I can't confirm. But I would say, I suppose it's not that different, except I don't believe Jedzia would kill me. I don't know if someone with schizophrenia would kill me, but I don't know. Either way, this is where Odo basically mentions a deuterium shipment. I can't really pronounce the word deuterium shipment, and
Hmm.
Quark plays dumb, but it's very clear he kind of knows about this. And meanwhile, what we're seeing the character Prim in the background kind of give Odo a look like, why did you just mention that?
Mm.
And then Prim confronts Odo, saying, like, look, we don't do this in Starfleet. We don't just tell known criminals about, like, rare shipments that are coming in. Odo basically is like, I'm security in charge here. I don't listen to you. And Prim's basically just keeps pushing it. And Odo says, like, if you insist. This is another dynamic I really like in this episode. These two characters go on a full arc, and it's definitely in the background, but it's just very well done. Like it
Yeah,
starts off with these characters not really getting along, and it ends with these characters probably having a very strong, healthy respect for one another.
yeah. It's a standard. Like they're having to find the boundaries of each other because they're used to their jurisdiction being, their jurisdiction. But it's like, yeah, they've got to
Yeah, but I think
figure
it's.
it out here.
I mean, they're clearly butting heads, but I don't think either. It's like neither character's really in the wrong, right?
Hmm.
And Cisco gets involved in it, and I like a lot of what he says. There's some weird stuff about it, but the next scene really sets up like the stakes of this episode. This is why I think this episode's very well written. I mean, we're about, let's see, how far are we into the episode? We're 11 minutes in the episode. We've already established like multiple character dynamics and the stakes of the episode. This is pretty like, and it's done very effectively. I don't think there's any like wasted time. I think everything is really sort of well informed or building character. So the next
Mhm.
scene is basically talking about the Kobliad people are a dying race, and they require deuterium to stabilize their cell structures and prolong their life. They're really afraid, but
Mhm.
even with like the Gamma Quadrant, there's just not enough deuterium to like protect to keep this entire race like thriving. So it's incredibly valuable. It's incredibly like sought after on the black market, and they're really afraid that this is going to get like stolen.
Mhm.
So,
Mhm.
basically, it's just the characters talking about like they're really worried with the situation, and they start talking about Kajada, saying, "Oh, so the guy who died supposedly is known as Vantica," and then they start talking about her and how like crazy she kind of seems to be about him. Like she's acting very irrational from their perspective, and
Mhm.
Dax is kind of the voice of reason. She's like, "Look, she's been hunting this guy for like most of her adult life. This is probably the person she is closest to, whether she likes it or not." And I do like that
Mhm.
Cisco's like, look, as long as it doesn't hinder any of our operations, let's accommodate her. Whether it's crazy or not, let's do the extra scans. Let's do the extra consideration. Like, let's check for clones. Like, that's all the stuff
Mhm.
they do. They're like, we need to look for abnormal life forms on the ship. Clones. We need to see if the dead body was a clone. It's all this crazy stuff that you think is like, yeah, that exists in Star Trek. I don't know. It's
Mhm.
funny because like it'd be funny if they brought up other examples. Like, what if he used the transporter to create a transporter duplicate of himself, and like other
Yep.
crazy nonsense that we have seen in Star Trek before. And
Yep.
then Prim asks to speak to sort of Cisco in private, and he sort of brings up the idea that like he kind of gives a backhanded comment to Odo, saying like, yeah, he's good at keeping stuff on the promenade. And Cisco's like, but he's like, well, I don't know if I think this shipment's a bit over his head, the security for it. And this is where Cisco like immediately shuts him down. Like he's like, look, it's hard to keep a secret in this place. I'm sure almost everyone knows about it. Odo was probably making sure Quark knows that we know. He knows. And as Prim tries to like counter that, Cisco just shuts him down, saying, like, you and I are guests of the Bajorans, Lieutenant. You don't have to forget what you learned in the Academy. Just don't throw it in anyone's face here. If you're really smart, you might even learn a few things about the station security from our constable. And Prim immediately is like, all right, very clear, like Captain. I do like
Yeah.
the scene because it shows like Cisco heard him out. So I do have a little bit of an issue. I think Cisco's a little bit aggressive here. I don't think Prim's behavior kind of warranted it. Like I felt Prim was
He-
asking some like reasonable questions considering he's new on the station.
She.
And
Prim. Oh wait, no, you're right. I'm dumb. He. I keep hearing Prim. I think like, oh, it's the
I was about to say
detective
it's a
who's
very
on
ugly
this.
woman.
I. Wow. Wow. Bigot. Um.
Fair,
Uh.
but
But
I was
yeah,
I was
Prim
looking at the
is.
picture of him and you're like it's she. I'm like I don't. What are you talking about?
Because we have two new people here. It's like, and the fact spoiler alert, we won't keep this one for a long time. The Starfleet one for a long time. It's like, oh, I hear
Well, he
different
stays for
name
a
than
few
normal.
episodes.
Yeah, but then he's gone. He's never mentioned again. He's only here because O'Brien's actor Colm couldn't be here, and they needed like basically a yellow shirt. Like
Well,
that's pretty much like.
I think they do a lot more with that. I mean, we see this a few times at DS9. This is something that the series is very good with, where oftentimes when it has sort of the one-off character for an episode that's going to die or something, or that
Hmm.
needs to be sort of utilized for a plot point, they'll introduce them like 2 or 3 episodes beforehand as a very minor role. I know they do this with
Yeah.
one of the people who's kind of just like on the computer in the background of the command center. Like at one point, they like draw attention to her like 2 or 3 times in different episodes before she's actually
Hmm.
relevant in an episode. So they kind of do that with him here, where it's like, yeah, he's a major player in these first few episodes, and then we kind of like let him go. It's like, yeah, I guess that makes sense. Like it
Yeah,
makes sense
but
that
the thing that
occasionally you're
really
gonna.
sucks about him, the thing that really sucks about him, like now I'm remembering it, he's basically just proto Eddington. You know Eddington. Um,
I do know Eddington. Eddington's
uh,
another character they do that with, where they introduce him for almost a whole season prior to the plot line that involves him.
yeah, but well, he's involved in various plotlines. But here's the thing: Prim is basically in the same role Eddington is here, of like conflict with Odo as a Starfleet security person. But then Prim is let go because it's like, oh, we don't like we kind of just want the yellow shirt. But then it's like, oh, we need this sort of character again. It's like if I had to guess, it's probably a case of they couldn't get the actor. I would not be surprised if that's the case, and thus I made Eddington.
Well, I don't
Um,
see. I don't. I mean, who knows about that? But it also it makes sense in the setting, right? Like, there's always going to be times when you have some security officer travel to the station. Uh, hey, it's not really a big fit, but you're here for like the next couple weeks while we do some sort of security project or something, and then you transfer to a different like station, different like facility or something like that. That's gonna happen. And
Yeah.
I think it's fine to do that, especially if like, hey, instead of just like rewriting this so you can account for not having like O'Brien or something. It's like, yeah, like actually give this guy a character, have him have a little arc with Odo, and build Odo's character up because of it. Because
Hmm.
again, like I was kind of saying, I think I think Cisco's a little bit harsh here. I think Cisco's very much in the realm of like, we're guests here. We like, don't forget what you have, but don't throw it in people's face. Like, I don't know if he was throwing it in people's face here. Like, you haven't been complained to by Odo. This guy came to you saying like, hey, I'm a little concerned about, how my standing with the security officer here. Maybe we need to figure out how to do this. And is he out of line? I don't think so. He's asking the captain or the commander a legitimate question. You know,
Yeah.
he's trying to say like, hey, so I'm trying to do my job here. I don't really know how things go on here. So like, this is how I think it should be done. That's kind of what my job is supposed to be. I'm supposed to give you my advice here. And like, I think Cisco shuts him down a little bit harshly, but nothing that's actually said I think is inappropriate. I think everything that's said makes sense for the dynamic. Like
Hmm.
Cisco, it's basically, it sounds a lot like Cisco trying to immediately convey to this guy what it's taken Cisco probably a few weeks to learn, of like, yeah, you can't just do everything the same way Starfleet will have you do it out here. Like we're not really in Federation space. This is not really a Federation station, even though we occupy it. So it does seem
Hmm.
like he's being very helpful, and I do like it, and I do like how quickly Primin just sort of says, all right, yes sir, I'll do what I can. Like, you know, very much like how a military would operate. It's, you don't really question the superior officer if they tell you to do something. It's like, well, I'm doing it, I guess. Like, I could complain, but it's not really going to help.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
let's see. Da-da-da. Oh, so they're also, the last thing we see in the scene is they're gonna involve Kajada with the Kobliat security officer, or like they're gonna involve her basically in to keep security tracking of the deuterium shipment. It is her race. They also probably trust her, and they probably think she would
Yeah.
know, especially if they're worried about this guy being on the station or somehow still being alive. Having her on the team is probably a good thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Makes perfect sense.
Yeah, and then let's see here. The next scene we have. I do like the yeah, because it's the scene where Primin kind of apologizes to Odo. He's like, "Look, well, not kind of. He actually does. I apologize for getting off on the wrong foot." Odo's like, "Think nothing of it," and he's like, "Listen, this is your ballywick. I didn't mean to be throwing my weight around. No hard feelings." And Odo does actually seem genuinely like, "Oh, at least this guy's apologizing," you know.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
he then follows up with like, just because I'm Starfleet security doesn't mean I don't respect your opinion. How about showing me what you got, and we'll see if we can. Is there anything we can work with? Odo is initially very like, okay, like here's what we're doing. Here are my plans. I can assure you I've taken every precaution. And let's see. Oh, and this is when they notice the database services are not available. He contacts Kira. Turns out their entire active memory has been wiped.
Oh no.
Now,
Oh
let me
no.
see if I can try and recall, what does active memory like really mean? Because like part of the point they make is that when this deuterium shipment was coming in, Odo made sure the specific file, I think, regarding the deuterium shipment was secured. So, oh yeah, there's
Hmm.
all these safeguards in place so you can't access it. That's how Odo
Hmm.
explains it. And he's like, well, you couldn't put those same securities around the whole active memory because otherwise
Hmm.
no one would be able to like use the computer at all. It's like, okay, I guess that tracks. So
Yeah.
somebody, and Kajada believes it is uh, uh, Vantika. She believes it's Vantika. She's like, I know it's him. This is how he thinks. This is what he does. He did this on a previous station. That's what she is. Like, she thinks that, and she's like, look, he wiped your whole memory so you wouldn't notice, so he could have access to that one file because you couldn't block the whole system. And she mentions that he
Hmm.
does it by going through some sort of vulnerability you have on the station, a secondary system, some that runs through the entire facility but isn't covered by security. Then Kira brings up the idea of the lighting controls of the replicators. And
Hmm.
this is when it's like, oh yeah, like they found an unauthorized tap in the temperature controls on level 21. And, there's a brief moment where Odo and Prim sort of step on each other's toes. And this is the big issue I have with this episode. So, this guy wipes the entire station active memory through a temperature
Yeah.
control. Now, I
Yeah.
think you brought up when I brought this as an issue that like it seems like something that he would have to have a lot of skill with. It's not something the average person could do. Maybe it's not something even the average skilled individual can do. This is like
Hmm.
absurd. But my first thought was like, yeah, but Kira kind of jumps on the idea really quickly as if she understands what Kajada's saying. Like Kajada runs like throws out this like what should be, I guess, a crazy idea. He went through a secondary system in order to get to your memory banks, and then Kira's like lighting controls. I'm like, whoa, wait a minute, is that possible? Like you just you.
So I remember this conversation. Yeah. So folks, just so you know, any smart technology you put in your house is another vulnerability in your cybersecurity. Do not put smart technology in your home because this is the shit that happens.
Thank you, Pike
Like
Kaczynski, but
because really, you're comparing me to Uncle Ted? God, come on! At least go with a hacker, not a pipe bomber. God, but no, this is like legitimately like a thing that can happen. Of like every time, like the more you hook everything in together and like make it like connected in this way of like, oh, everything can be controlled from this one point. Yeah, but now every point can access that control point because it's like,
so
and
yeah, like I agree because what we do see in like Star Trek is like you'll be like, oh, computer lights, right, and then lights will dim or light up depending
Mhm,
on whatever you want. And I guess the issue with that, right, is we're like this is the vulnerability that the second this ever happens, you would never structure the system like this ever again, right? Like you would
mhm,
immediately be like, okay, we are separate. Like I'm sorry guys, you don't get voice activated lights anymore. Go hit the frickin' switch. Like you
mhm.
deconnect that thing from the main station. You deconnect everything you can from the main computer, or you find a way to isolate the main computer. So like it's absolutely kind of absurd. I mean, this would be the equivalent, right, of like you somehow hack into a military base's generators by guessing their Wi-Fi password. It's like,
Mhm.
so no, I don't think that's really something that. Now, admittedly, this is sci-fi future, but you'd think that this would be like this is like the constant like escalation of conflict here.
Mhm.
You find like a hacker finds a way to screw with a station. Okay, so the stations and every station afterwards learns about how this hacker functioned, and then they account for it. And then the hackers find a
Mhm.
new way of getting through, right? So I would have preferred that they did something like, oh, you're. Oh, I keep getting feedback from you, Pike.
I am sorry. Hang
Okay,
on. I'm just gonna turn down my output as much as possible so I don't
so we can't hear you.
speak.
Hello.
Ew. Okay, that should be
All
good
right,
for now. There you go.
but anyway, so like I'm trying. I almost lost my train of thought. So this would be like I think it would be better if they made a point that because it's a Cardassian station and they're basically like hot wiring Starfleet tech into Cardassian tech, there are vulnerabilities
Mhm.
that they can't account for. Like that would be fine because it would make sense from like the nature of how the station works. And it's like, yeah, this is not
Mhm.
something we can account for. It's unfortunate. It's a compromise that we have to make. So it's a little bit weird. It's a little bit odd.
Mhm.
Still getting
Mhm.
feedback, but it's fine. I think we can kind of ignore it.
Yeah. I'm
Anyway,
sorry.
anyway, so this is let's see. There's a brief fight between like Cisco and Kajada where he's kind of like, look, Vantika is dead. We need to think of actual threats here. And Kajada's like, oh, don't patronize me. Cisco's like, oh, did he have an accomplice? And this is where I'm gonna read this out a little bit because she talks about all the ways Kajada has basically like he's obsessed with prolonging his own life. He uses drugs, cryogenics, transplants. As a medical survey supervisor in a high security penitentiary, he used prisoners for his illegal experiments in cellular longevity. So this guy's a mega genius that does everything he can to keep himself alive. And
Yeah.
basically, like Cisco basically capitulates a little, saying like, "Look, Bashir, like, is there anything else you could do?" And even Bashir is like, you know, uh, let's see, yeah, even Bashir's like, "Look, we can't. I'll do more tests, but there's not much else he could do." And then he mentions that his DNA sample, the DNA sample, was sent to Starfleet Command, and that it's going to take 12 more hours before they have an actual confirmation if the dead body was a clone. That sort of stuff.
Mm.
So and then this is where we get Odo asking to speak to Cisco on his own, and I do like this scene. Although again, I think Odo's a little bit aggressive in this scene because how it starts off is he's basically like, I'm handing in my resignation, and Cisco's like, oh, you're overreacting. He's like, oh, so you already know about this? He's like, yes, Lieutenant Prim mentioned it to me. So,
Mhm.
Cisco says like, when we got here, you promised I'm head of security. Cisco's like, you are constable, and he's like, oh, you call me constable. It's very cute. He's like, look, it's an expression of affection. Kira says this, and Odo is basically just like, he's in this just angry mode. He's just getting mad at everything, and let's see,
Mhm.
And then Cisco does say like, look, Odo, I like you because I like you because I like to know where a man stands. No Starfleet officer can do the job you do. Odo takes a little pride in this, like he puffs out his chest, and he's like, look, when it comes to these joint operations, you're in charge. And Odo's like, all right, you know what, that's acceptable. And I guess like I don't know if I like the acting in the scene because I think Odo does a very good job. I think Cisco does a good job, but
Hmm.
again, I think Odo is a little bit aggressive. It seems like he was just told to amp it up a little bit too high. And I guess like my issue is the last scene we had with him and Prim seemed like they were getting along. Prim apologized, said,
Yeah.
"Hey, like you're in charge. Sorry that I was kind of acting a little bit uppity before, but I'm just I'm new here. I'm just trying to you know get my bearings." And Odo like comes in
Hmm.
here and says, there's that brief moment where both Odo and Prim move to make a security like command over their comm badge at the same time. But in that scene, Prim capitulates and lets Odo make the command. Right? They both tap their badge and they're about saying the same thing, and then Prim like stops and lets Odo continue. So I guess it's a bit weird here
Yeah,
that
it
Odo's so
almost feels
aggressive.
like if anything, like the last scene had it's it's so they may it's I don't know. It's just yeah,
I
the
mean, it kind of
ordering
feels like
just
they
feels
filmed it
weird
out.
on the scenes.
It kind of feels like they almost filmed it out of order. And
Yeah.
like as a result, this is a scene where they didn't really realize. Like again, it's weird because, and I guess this is a testament to the writing. Nothing in the scene is explicitly like how it's said is not the what is said is not the problem. It's how it's said is the problem. I feel like Odo's too aggressive, right?
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
it still makes sense that he'd be concerned about this. Maybe he feels like he's being pushed out. I do like this one scene, or like one line he says. I'm trying to like see if I can find it. Uh, he asks, oh yeah, I guess like Cisco does say like you have to realize if Starfleet is going to take command of the station, we're going to have some security to protect our interest. Odo is understanding of that.
Hmm.
So it's just like this feels a little out of character for Odo. Odo's a little bit more logical and like sees the bigger picture a lot of the time. So
Hmm.
for him to kind of get maybe this defensive when they've already done this like little bit of capitulating is kind of like I don't know. I feel like Premin has like done a good job like working with you. Like I guess what I would
Hmm.
have preferred is if you wrote it so that Premin was maybe a little bit less accepting. Like he was like, I'm still gonna try my best to interject what I want to say here. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think Odo is maybe being a little bit unreasonable here. But I guess that's a little in character, but I also think I don't think it's 100% justified. At the same time,
Hmm.
it's like it's still a good scene. I still like how you know both characters make logical arguments towards each other. There's not like one person's being unreasonable. Like when you read the dialogue, when you read it in the transcript, you'd be like, oh wow, like Cisco makes good arguments, Odo makes good arguments, but ultimately Odo says, okay, you know what, you are correct, like Commander, like your station does, Starfleet does have an interest in the station, so we're not just going to give it up. Like you have to give some
Hmm.
security, or I get that. But at the same time, Cisco gives him the sort of like assurance that in joint operations, you're in charge. So it's really just more
Hmm.
situations where Odo now has more power. He has more command because he'll be able to command those Starfleet security officers around.
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
yeah, it's interesting. And let's see. So then we get to the next scene where Dax is in the. So let's see. Hold on, I'm trying to see. Oh yeah, they look through all of Vantica's personal belongings and they found a little computer chip and she's gonna do a reading of it. It's apparently what she says a map of the humanoid brain. I find that funny
Mm.
because we know this is a map of Vantica's brain, and I get like they said humanoid as in like, oh yeah, anything that's human shaped, I suppose. I just find it funny that I guess humanoids all have relatively the same brain structure in a galaxy. Like,
Yeah, but we also kind of know that some there has to be a good number that don't because you remember the TNG episode with the one species that basically communicates through memes, like vocalized memes.
yeah, Darmok.
Yeah, Darmark. It's like that is not how our brain would process like communication. And it's like it has to be like a difference. Like we can train ourselves to emulate it, but it's like and it's, I guess it. I guess you could like overall keep it that way,
I mean, if
but
it's just saying like, oh, it's just the shape, like the shape of the brain.
The, the
And
structure, the general
yeah, and this
structure.
is where we learn that Dax supports phrenology.
Uh, what does she say specifically?
No, she's just like it's just a map of the human brain. She doesn't actually like. I was making a joke that if all the human brains, like humanoid brains, are shaped similarly, I guess that would mean like they have similar capabilities. But it's just I was just making a joke because she's like that's all that you would have is like the shape, right? You wouldn't have the like the structures of the brain wouldn't be the same, like the language centers wouldn't be the same. But
Hmm.
I was making a joke that's like, oh yes, it's the general shape of a humanoid brain. If it was a little bit different, we'd be dealing with a different species. But all right.
Oh my god. Holowix. We can't
Look, I'm
talk about
saying
measuring.
that's the implication that Dax said. I'm just saying.
I don't care if it's her implication. I just don't want to touch the subject.
Look, she has to have a
Holy
character
sh!
flaw. She has to have a character flaw, and I think this is something that'll really round out her character.
Oh no! Oh my! You know what? Back to the previous episode. You have to know that there are like symbiotes that have those beliefs, and it's just like as we said there. Yeah, they're probably very conservative. Like there has to be like problematic like takes like that amongst them.
Well,
Like
I mean,
I,
remember
I
it is mentioned that like the brain waves of joined Trill are merged with like the brain waves of the symbiote. So like they could be differentiated, but you can't like detect one without the other. Is kind of what Bashir said.
Mhm.
So I mean, you know, imagine this be like, well, you know, we symbiotes, we have basically two brains, or like we joined with symbiotes or have like two brains. So you know, just saying, we're a little bit smarter than you non-joined. And then of course you have the Vulcan who comes in and says, well, actually, we're smarter than all of you with our
Yeah,
copper
because the
blood.
Vulcans always. Yeah, yeah, like the fact that they have copper blood, like Star Trek really does do that a lot. Where it's like, okay, how much difference does that actually make? You know what I mean?
Well, you
It's
know
just
why
a
they did it,
detail. It's
right?
not.
I thought I mentioned in a previous episode. You know why they have that, right?
No, I don't. Why?
In one of the original Star Trek movies, they wanted to have a bunch of dead Vulcans floating around in space with like a cool effect where they had blood floating around, but that wasn't going to get past the
Uh,
genes. So they changed the color of the blood to green.
oh, big brain play. Get around the censorship, boys.
Yeah, and I guess
Oh
from
man.
there they were just like, yeah. So why is the blood green? What would make it green? Copper. Copper would make it green. There we go. It's like, okay. I mean, we have iron in our blood, so I guess I can't really say copper's impossible. I'm not a biologist, but something tells me that that seems fake.
Uh, hey, anyone in the audience who's a scientist or like a doctor scientist, not listen. If you study like the science of like engineering science, shut up. I want an actual like medical doctor here. Tell us if that would actually work. Okay.
So, first
Um.
off, all of our three viewers that we regularly have, two of which are totally just me with my alternative accounts. Uh, I'm pretty sure we're not going to find a medical doctor in there.
No, 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 no. We've got like I think we're in the tens. I'm sure we've got one in there. Come on, guys, show us your PhD. Come on, come on.
Just post a
Don't
picture of your PhD.
yeah, just whip it out for us on the
Just
table
your
now.
full name, social security number, and the five digit no your credit card and the three digits on the
Oh,
back.
shut up! We're in the twenties. We're in the twenties with the last
Woo!
episode. Woo!
Woo!
Anyways,
I totally just
we've
haven't
gone
watched the
off
episode 20
topic.
times.
God damn it! I'm very careful about that. Like, I don't want to accidentally do that to our thing because it's like,
Well, I mean, it wouldn't be a big deal. You just have to keep track of how many times you watched it. I think, like, you know, with my with the first video I posted, because I have no idea. I'm, you know, again, I'm still learning all this stuff. I'm like, is the audio good? I would literally go to the video and check different parts of the video at different times to be like, let me make sure the audio is fine. So I know I added
mm,
like accidentally like 10 views to that first video just because I was like constantly
fodder,
going back to.
fodder, fodder,
Oh
fodder,
no, I'm the
fodder.
world's shittiest bot.
Yeah, you're the shittiest bot. Oh my lord.
Anyway,
Uh,
so let's see. Then we move to another scene where we have I this scene's funny. So Korka's digging on the ground and he gets mad at his like employees because he found 3 coins on the ground. They're clearly not cleaning and looking for coins enough. He's like, there could be valuable jewelry. You know what? Leave. Anything I find is mine. And
base.
And then we get a point where he's standing in the dark, and two hands come out from behind, and they grab him, choking him. He says, "Did you get did you hire the crew I needed?" And Quark is confused because he's like, as far as Quark knows, Vantika's dead. He's like, "I'm very much alive." And then he like disappears, and Quark misses him. Now you can kind of tell who this is based on the voice, but I'm not going to reveal it just yet because I didn't catch it. I remember not catching it the first time, and now every time I've watched it since, I'm like, how did I miss this? The voice is so obvious. But then we move to another scene where the doctor has called in Kajada into the medical ward, saying like, "Hey, we got the DNA testing. This is not his body." But she's again being very adamant. You must have overlooked something. Like there has to be a problem here. And this is where Dax or Bashir gets a call from Dax, and this is where she reveals that he has some like this. What this chip is it is a scan of Vantika's brain, which was pretty obvious, and it's basically he found a way to save his consciousness on here, and he probably did it weeks before he died, so it would be a second copy of his brain, and he'd have to find a way to implant it into something else to keep himself alive. So at this point, yeah, they've kind of confirmed in a way now they make a point that the consciousness could be like the consciousness would continue. The consciousness lives on, which okay, that's kind of ignoring the rules here. You're creating a duplicate, but again,
Yeah,
it's like
yeah. Well, to be fair, this is also the setting where they're fine with being broken apart at the molecular level for transporting, which that kills you. That kills you. That is not you that comes out. That is a separate you. Everyone, do not go into the teleporter.
play
Like,
Soma and then
oh my
realize the
god.
horror that is Star Trek universe.
Yes, yes. Yes. Listen. I love Data, but androids are a fundamental threat to humanity. AI in general. Oh my god.
Okay, well that's a different argument. I was just mostly talking about the nature of like losing your consciousness to replication. But
Oh
I
yeah.
mean, here's the thing: if this guy's really obsessed with living on, he might not care, right? It's the idea of like
Yeah.
as long as a part of me continues to exist, I'm happy. It's
Yeah.
the
Like.
funny Valentine of the Star Trek universe.
Yeah. I would not be surprised if somehow if it ever happened to like two of him are present at the same time, they'd be like we are one because like it's still him and it just allows him to
Yeah,
do
because
the research more
I'd
efficiently.
imagine he's probably so like arrogant that he doesn't even want another version of him to live. He'd be like, yeah, I just want the me, the one singular
I
me.
I don't know. I think he would resolve it of like we are one. We are not two. Like we are
Oh
not
yeah,
separate versions.
it was Invincible that sort of made the rule that if because they have the Mauler twins and they can never make more than one clone and they can never know which clone is the real one because if they did, then the clone would try and kill the non-clone. So it's like, yeah, we just make it so that we never know which one of us is the real one. So we never kill each other. I'm like, that sounds a little, bullshit, but that's kind of what that series is. It's a
Hey,
little
it does
silly.
lead to a great moment in the show, where the one character, like the solution for that character was like the one's gonna die anyways, and he's like, please just live for us. And it's like, oh,
That's fair. That's fair.
nice.
But
Yeah,
here again, I think Van could just be he would be okay as long as a version of him survives.
yeah,
So
yeah.
we get but basically this is the confirmation that yeah, a form of Antica somehow might exist, and they make a point that this storage of brain could theoretically be put into someone else's head and be stored in an unconscious part of their brain. This is where they kind of use the dated explanation that well, we don't use all of our brain. It's like, well, okay, sure, like, but they could be like,
Sure.
look, Vantica's consciousness could be occupying someone else, and they ask who, and the first thought they have is, oh, Kajada, like it could be her. Like that makes sense, right? Because they found her unconscious on the ship. They found him unconscious on the ship. The fact that they're both the same species would probably make it easier to do it. And there's also like Jadzia brings up like the cruel poetic justice of hiding in the mind of your worst enemy. And they bring this concern to Cisco, and I mean they're basically going back and forth. Are we sure about this? They can't be sure, but they also don't know. And they make a point that she wouldn't even know, but they make and then they say like, okay, like we have to remove her from the security detail. We have to like we're not going to tell her yet because we don't really know. We can't confirm this. It's worrisome. And Odo wants to have someone like watch over Kajada. And this is a scene where Prim actually like counters Odo, saying like, look, we're already stretched to our limit preparing for the shipment. We could just track her movements, with the computer system. this is something that's a little bit weird because this actually comes up later. So I feel like they contradict this in Star Trek from time to time. Sometimes they can
Hmm.
only track the comm badges. Like if you take off your comm badge and put it on
Yeah,
something, you can't track them.
it
Now I
might be a
imagine,
case her thing is logged into, but then there's the question of like, well, no, she would just take it off if she's being controlled. I think they can only track you you specifically if you have a comm badge, but without it, they can still sense that there's some sort of life form in an area.
yeah, they can scan for life forms. So theoretically, you could constantly be scanning for a single life form and just track its movements, so you would never lose it.
Hmm. Hmm.
I guess you could do that.
But then if she goes into the promenade when it's busy, it's like you're gonna lose that in the
No,
noise.
I mean, here's the thing: even modern technology is advanced enough to track individuals in crowds. Careful with your phones there,
Um,
buddy.
yeah, 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 yeah.
But it's just a
Um,
matter of So I do like the one scene where what do we tell Kajada, and Odo's like nothing. She'll figure it out on her own, and when she does, send her to me. And then we get the immediate scene where she's yelling at Odo like, "Why have I had my power? Like, why my security clearance removed?" Odo's like, "Look, I ordered it." She says, "What kind of fool are you?" And Odo's just like, "My own special variety." Odo has such snark. Odo's really good in this episode. He's not even like the main focus, but he's just really good. And
mhm,
let's see. Yeah, they're making a point that they're trying to move the shipment, but they don't even want to. They want to limit the amount of people who are like following it. He himself, Lieutenant Prim, Major Cura, and Commander Cisco are the only ones who would have any idea about like the security of the shipment. And Kajada's kind of like she kind of is okay with that. She's like, all right, well at least less security the better. The safer it is.
mhm,
Um,
mhm.
let's see. She seems concerned about Quark, and Odo says like, "Look, he has his hands in everything. Like, what about like Odo basically is like, look, I'm keeping an eye on him, but she doesn't seem happy about it." And that's where we get to the next scene where we see Quark talking with the people he's hired, and she's sort of like she's sort of in like I guess like the third or fourth floor. Like she's pretty high up. She's looking down upon him, like hidden. And then she
Mhm.
suddenly seems to be like shoved off the railing in a very awkward scene. Let me see if I
Yeet.
can get an image of it. She's like, she immediately just we cut back to her and she's like mid fall, like holding on to something for her dear life, and then she falls and she gets injured. Um, Cork denies anything. He's like, yeah, I was just cleaning up. Like I wasn't talking to criminals. She's now regulated to this bed. If she moves at all, she'll become paralyzed. She has to they have to fix her. Sci-fi medical bullshit.
Mhm, mhm,
And their
mhm.
concern is that
Filter
somehow,
better.
yeah, they're somehow concerned that the Vantica copy in her brain tried to kill her,
Mm,
which I guess the
doesn't
first
check
I guess the
out.
first yeah, it doesn't really check out because that would mean he dies too, unless he has another
Yeah.
clone somewhere else, which in theory is possible. But yeah, so she's been attacked, and this is where we get Dax has come up to the solution where it turns out that there was a secret like energy generator underneath Vantica's fingernail, like a microscopic, that could send an electrical impulse into anyone he grabbed and
Mhm.
implant his consciousness in there. And this is where we should have figured out. He grabbed Bashir at the start of the episode.
Yep.
Yep, and if you listen to the voice that Vantica made before, it was very clearly Bashir. So we have all the elements here, and Bashir is in danger. Now, Cisco and Dax don't know this yet. They have no idea about this, but they're basically like, we're trying to figure out who did this, and let's see. We get a cut to a scene where Kira's doing some last minute security details, like saying making sure that all the like system security is like accounted for, criticizing some of the as you call them just like plain yellow shirts, just like yes, do this better, like make sure it's within 0.03% effective range or something like that.
Yeah.
And
Well, I call them just the yellow shirts because it's like,
oh yeah, it's the
um,
opposite of red shirts now because red shirts are the important people now.
yeah, but I say it because it's like, okay, if we ever meet somebody who's not an officer, like not ensign above, it's probably a yellow shirt. They're the enlisted scene to generally go into yellow because it's like, okay, like command is so the actual ordering I would imagine for like where you're most likely to be if you're enlisted is number one, yellow because like that's security, engineering, stuff where warrant officers and such, and I'm like specialists. That's generally where they'll be. Science, well, blue because science and medical, you're probably gonna have enlisted there, like doing specific research. Now they're not an officer, but they might, have advanced knowledge of certain things. And then command is like, no, well,
You
Command
probably have.
has.
It depends on the route you want to take. I sure imagine a lot of people, because we know, for example, a lot of characters like, oh yeah, I'm in the command route now, or I'm in the engineering route now, and they'll literally change their shirt even if they just started that
Yeah, but those.
path.
That's mostly we see that with officers,
Yeah,
because
but I'd imagine
war.
they would be the same thing. So it'd be like, what are you trying to pursue as an enlisted here, right? So some enlisted might be like, I'm trying to pursue some sort of leadership role. So
Hmm.
you're trying to, you're working with, squads or teams, and you're trying to push towards, leadership positions. I agree with you that security, if you're any form of security or I guess just like boots on the ground kind of people, you would probably be yellow shirts. But I'd imagine a
Hmm.
red shirt and enlisted would be leading the yellow shirt enlisted.
Yeah.
But
I'm trying to
anyway,
find.
we do get to
Sorry.
a scene where they're wondering where Primin is, and we're gonna skip over a scene real quick. But then Odo finds Primin, and this is where Primin's like, "Hey, I took a cue from you. I decided to use Vantika's logic just like you did, like before with the system wipe, and using this, Primin found in I think he found it in let's see, where did he find it? The temperature control section. He found another subspace crossover shunt, which allowed Vantika to hack into the system before. So this would, by grabbing this stops Vantika from shutting the station down, which he planned to do. So his plan was to get in a runabout with the deuterium, or get in a runabout, hijack the deuterium ship, and then escape when the station was trying to recover from this system like restart, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then we also one scene we see is Quark leading his crew, saying like, "Yeah, I'm just the money guy. I'm not here to." Oh, hold on. I think I got a screw up in my VLC. No, my VLC screwed up.
Don't tell me we're gonna have to re-record everything.
No, 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 no. We wouldn't have to do it even if it did screw up. I just fixed it, by the way. But
Okay.
we would have just not had visuals. So
Mm.
the VLC basically like Cork is basically talking to these guys saying like, "Yep, I'm just getting paid. You guys are doing all the hard work. See you later." And then they open a door. He's like, "Yeah, somehow Vantika got all the security detail." And it's like, "Oh, turns out Bashir is being controlled by Vantika." And he speaks in a
You.
very funny way. It's it's the actor playing
Mm.
Bashir. First off, doing Bashir's accent because his real life accent's a lot more British. I think it's a lot
Yeah.
more like so he's trying to do the Bashir accent, but trying to do as if someone else is speaking and has a different sort of cadence to it. So
Hmm.
it's a little awkward. I don't think it's bad. It's just kind of like very weird. It's very like campy, I guess would be the best way to say it.
Hmm.
He's like, "It is me, Rayo Vantica." It's like, oh, okay, buddy, like you're
Hmm.
a little bit too dramatic here. But yeah, Bashir is controlled by Vantica, and this is where like Quark learns about it. And Dax is looking for Bashir. They can't find him. And then they also notice, oh yeah, by the way, a runabout is now trying to go to the deuterium like shuttle and try and hijack it. And they capture it in a tractor beam. I mean, we're kind of rushing through this, but a lot of it is just the logistics of all this stuff going down that's sort of been pre-prepared. And yeah, Vantika takes control of the ship with his men. One thing I do like is that Vantika sends his men over first to deal with all the danger, and then he goes over afterwards after the danger has been neutralized. Again, it's characterization for that guy. He doesn't want to put himself in danger. This is his life right now. He doesn't have any backups at the moment. So, this has been he has to be extra careful.
Hmm.
Once they're grabbed in a tractor beam, they have their shields up so they can't be transported off. But also, he tells them to use like impulse away from the station so that they can't be pulled in by the tractor beam. So now they're stuck.
Hmm.
And this is where it gets a little bit silly. Not silly, but like it becomes a bit of a stalemate and no one knows what to do. So the station can't pull the ship in, the ship can't escape. And if the ship keeps trying to pull away, it's going to explode, which would destroy all
Hmm.
the
Hmm.
deuterium, but also kill Bashir, which, Vantika knows they don't want to kill Bashir. So he's basically holding Bashir hostage. Uh,
Hmm.
let's see. I'm trying to find like the actual dialogue here. Um, oh yeah. So Dax recommends like they cut off the communication with Vantika, and Dax recommends that with some time she can send a pulse that would resonate off the shields and create a reflective EM field inside the ship, which would shut down. I guess it would shut down the like. Hold on, it would disrupt. Oh, here it is. With her exact model of Vantika's neural energy patterns, she can design an electromagnetic pulse to disrupt those patterns. Julian might emerge. We find a way to get in there. So You might also just probably liquefy Julian's brain. I don't know, Dex.
Yeah, yeah,
I mean, maybe
yeah.
she's really tired of him flirting with her, and she's kind of just like, well, if he lives, you know, we win the day. If he dies, I don't think Dax is that
Mm,
evil. I'm just
mm.
mostly joking.
I don't know. She's a trill. She's a trill.
True, as far as they're
Kind of
concerned, it's like,
evil.
oh, they're not evil, but they are psychotic.
Yeah,
So again,
yeah.
this is mostly Cisco trying to stall Vantica, and again, you're getting a lot of like hammy acting from Bashir Vantica here. Uh,
Yeah,
I don't think you're ready
he's
to
just
risk.
enjoying
Oh,
it.
also, if they go to warp while in the tractor beam, it will destroy the ship. But it would also spread deuterium like radiation all throughout the system.
Yep,
So there's a bigger,
yep.
yeah, there's a bigger threat here as well. Although Cisco's base, I do like Cisco basically says, "Look, I don't think you're willing to kill yourself. Like,
Yeah,
this would kill you, and you're someone who clearly stresses the idea of wanting to survive. So I
an
don't think you're willing to
egotist.
do this. Yeah, I mean, I don't think you're willing to do this. And he says, I don't think you're ready. Yeah, so this is where like Bashir, they're basically playing a game of chicken here, and fortunately, Dax succeeds in like shutting down Bashir's brain or the Vantica's brainwaves, which allows Bashir to wake up, and then they transport everyone off the ship back onto the station, and the day is saved.
Mm,
I
yeah,
mean,
yep.
again, it's like a lot of this episode is for building up for this interaction, and I don't dislike the interaction. Once Bashir wakes up, he's like fighting the consciousness of Antika, and he turns the ship's shields off, and they're able to get him all off. So it's like, you have a little bit of like multiple fronts here. You have the dynamic between Vantika and Cisco. You have the dynamic between Vantika and his crew because his crew start chickening out, and he has to kill them.
Hmm.
And then you have the dynamic, like the fight between Bashir and Vantika. So I think it's an interesting scene. It's just a bit like I wouldn't say it's weird, but it's like again, I think you brought it up before. It's hard to sort of like get good character when you're trying to have the actor who plays Bashir playing a very weird version of Bashir.
Yeah.
Like, what was the example?
It.
I don't know. I don't think you want to spoil it. Don't spoil it from Babylon 5. But that's what you were referring to, right? It's like here you didn't really like it because it
Oh
makes Bashir like act very weird
no,
and out
no,
of
no, no,
character.
no. So it's not that I don't. It's weird. I prefer the Babylon, like the Babylon 5 approach to it, but the resolution of it means this character who's been kind of a constant presence from the start of the show, but I feel like didn't get enough like time on the show. Basically got written off.
Hmm.
Maybe, and it's like, oh, I guess that character's gone, or at least that the personality that we had seen the whole
Okay.
time was gone. Yeah, that like, and the thing is, it's like it's very weird. I would rather have this plot line have a stronger like actual effect. Which
Hmm.
Babylon 5, pretty much every episode, they're like after like every episode there is a fundamental like this is going to like affect the status quo going forward, unlike Star Trek where it's like this first season a lot of it is just setting up, and then it's like there's episodes where it's going to progress the status quo, but it's also going to be a lot of like after like the problem of the week is done, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I see
And
what you mean. And like here, I mean, I like this. It really does sort of explain like some of the crazy stuff you can do in Star Trek. We do have one more
mhm.
scene that I do like. So they make a point that they are actually like transporting all the glial cells from Vantica's neural patterns out of Julian's head and putting them in a weird little
uh
containment field. So
mm,
I guess it's like the idea is like the little generator he had injected the cells into Bashir and then they infected his brain. It's a little weird how they
mhm,
explain it, but
mhm.
uh, there's something here that's a little fucked up. So Kajada, there's some apologies. Bashir's apologizing to Kajada because like, hey, look, I'm sorry, I should have listened to you. I feel quite humiliated. Cisco's like, look, no one blames you, and Kajada's like, look, it wasn't you, it was that. She points to the container, and then Dax is like, what do you intend to do with it? And Kajada's like, may I assume that you've returned custody of the prisoner to me, Commander Cisco? And Cisco's like, the prisoner? Yeah, what's left of him? He's yours. She's like, good. And then she fires a phaser at the thing and kills it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I do like that she confirms the prisoners in her custody. I still feel like this is something that's going to be very awkward to write to Starfleet. So, Commander Cisco, what happened? Well, we had this situation where this guy like infected one of my officers with a neural pattern. We managed to isolate the neural pattern and remove it and store it into a container. Ah, yes. So you have the prisoner stored in a container, right? Yeah. His whole neural pathways, his brain, everything about him. Yep. What happened to it? Oh, it got destroyed without
So
trial.
in
Like,
his defense, it's like, listen, we've like, this is ultimately like something that needs to be handled by her jurisdiction.
true.
Really, it's a case of like as far as we can tell, there's no blowback from this like happening. It's probably just a case of, like they're just happy this guy's gone because what he was doing. I remember this like them talking about it, like, yeah, this guy was a absolute fucking menace, and it's like it's one of those things like, yeah,
Yeah.
it's extrajudicial execution, which in our society, in our plan, it's like, yeah, no, that shouldn't fly. But for them, I get it. I get it. I don't necessarily agree with it, but I get it.
I mean, I guess it's just I don't have an issue. Again, I do like that she's like, look, the prisoner's in my custody. She has her own jurisdiction. The Federation can't interfere with that. But it is on your station, Cisco. I feel like this should have been something that's almost like you look shocked about it. Like Cisco's like, yeah, I really wish you just waited till you were off my station to do that. You know,
Hmm. Hmm.
like the
Hmm.
idea of like, I don't want to have to write a report that you extrajudicially killed a prisoner on my station, even though it technically was in your custody. It's like, well, yeah, but it's on your station. It's a little weird. It's a little like, ooh, that's a bit dubious. I don't know how to really look at that.
The
I mean, don't get me
dupes.
wrong. Don't get me wrong. This guy's a bad dude. At the same time, I don't think like I I don't believe in like I'm not really big on execution in general, but it's also like an element of, man, there was no real consideration for like his life there, Cisco. Okay then. I mean, I don't think he's a good guy, and I think he's probably more dangerous alive. But at the same time, it's like, ugh, okay, little questionable. But at the same time, that's kind of a theme of the show is that the morals are a lot more gray on the frontier. So I'm okay with it from a character and story perspective. It's just a bit like that's like the exact last thing of the episode, right? There's not even like a line afterwards. She just shoots it and that's it.
Yeah.
So
Um.
it's a very shocking ending, I suppose. But yeah, that is the passenger. I give this episode a B, kind of a B plus. I think there's a lot of good character stuff. I think there's one major character, like sort of tech flaw slash plot contrivance, but overall, I think it's not a bad episode. It does a lot for a relatively short runtime, and
Yeah.
I mean, I like it. I like the concept. There's some little iffy bits here and there, but it's not a bad episode
Yeah.
really in any regard. I would say it's a skippable episode only in the sense of it doesn't really do anything going forward, but I would not say
If you
skip it if
want
you want to see
Odo,
something of.
if you want Odo, this is a good episode of like him having to deal with Starfleet.
I
Plus,
mean, I also
this is
think you
the
get some
intro.
funny Bashir stuff.
Oh, yeah, but again, I don't care for the Bashir stuff because again, it's like the whole issue, like of oh, so you turn off the, like I'm just like I'm hung up on that. I'm just like,
Yeah, because
um,
I remember you were
Babylon
you were you
Five.
were.
I'm
Oh, go
sorry.
on.
Go ahead. Oh,
Well, I was
okay.
saying because you were
Babylon Five.
concerned. Oh, God damn it, Pike. Anyway, I'll
Go ahead.
finish what I need to say. You were concerned at the start of the episode where, like, the idea there was you thought from the moment Bashir was infected or around that time he was no longer conscious for the rest of the episode and he was somehow subverting everyone's actions. Which, if you look at the episode, that's not necessarily out of the question. Like Bashir never does
Hmm.
anything to explicitly help. He only he's like, yeah, he's totally dead. He's totally dead. There's nothing that can happen. So
Yeah.
it's implied that he's the one who pushed Kajata off the ledge. He was working with Quark. He used the security stuff. It's believable, but there is a line that says like that one, the second consciousness can hide in the brain, and second,
Yeah.
Vantika says that he basically makes Bashir go to sleep and takes control of him. So it's
Yeah.
only at the end when Bashir's not in there anymore.
I just, I don't know. I think it's just a fact of like again, like even before I saw the Babylon 5 episode, I had dubious feelings because it's like they use we only use part of the brain. It's like no, that's not how it fucking works. Like that's
Yeah, but
not
this is
how the
also in the
brain works.
'90s. This is in the '90s. This is in the '90s. They thought
Yes, but
differently back then.
Babylon 5 did it later, and they had the actual like explanation, like the more reasonable one of like this is a separate personality that you cultivate and you carve. uh what's the word I'm looking for? Uh, I'm trying to say I know the word, but I'm fucking up the pronunciation of it. Compartmentalize. There we go.
Yeah, compartmentalize.
It's basically hidden. Like it's not like oh you're using it. It's like no. Basically like it's basically a sleeper cell sort of situation of
Yeah,
like
I mean that sounds like a
and
better way to
I
do it.
yeah, which that's also dubious of just like how can you actually do that? But at least it's not going with the hokey. Oh, we only use like 10% of our brain, which everyone, I want you to know, 90% of your brain is just it telling itself to keep telling the body to keep breathing, like doing the stuff in the background that needs to be done that you're not conscious of. Like, don't think like you can just take stuff away from that. That's not how it works. First off, you can't do that. Second off, if you could, you'd kill yourself doing it. Don't do it. Like, it's basically like that's why if you ever like accidentally like Paul, you know how if you actually think about breathing and like having to actually do it, you cause yourself to stop breathing,
Yeah,
but
like how
then eventually,
everyone watching this video is going to be suffering from that right now. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. The reason why you won't suffocate from that and say it'll just kickstart naturally is because your brain will like basically emergency signals like, "Hey, start breathing, idiot!" Like, yeah,
Well,
yeah,
that's why you. Yeah. I mean, obviously the science is a little bit flimsy, the technology talk is a little bit flimsy, but the character work is generally pretty good. I think there's a lot of good like logical dialogue, a lot of good setup and payoff. I mean, I think this is a pretty like interesting episode to watch.
yeah.
I like it from the very beginning. It's like they had a very clear vision of what they wanted to tell with this story. Here's this guy who can escape
Objectively, it's a
death.
B. Subjectively, for me, it's a C. Like, I
Okay,
like
I
the
mean that's
Odo
fair.
stuff, but I don't care for the Bashir stuff because again, there's just
Yeah,
all this
I mean, like I
iffy.
said,
Like,
it's a bit of a skippable episode. It's not. It's not. I wouldn't put this on like my top 20 list of the series,
no.
but I do think
The
this might
only
be
thing
one of
you
my
need
higher
from
rated
it,
one this season.
yeah, the only thing you absolutely need from this is Primin, introduction, because the next episode has Primin. I think next episode is his last one. But the thing is, the next episode is Move Along Home. And God, it's gonna hurt reviewing that.
It's
God,
gonna be so much fun. I'm looking forward to it so
no,
much. I might make you
it's gonna
record
be
the episode
suffering.
today.
No, give me a week. I have Gundam stuff I need to do. Oh my God.
All
Ah,
right. Well, we can end it here because clearly we're just doing our stupid conversations that we normally have. Here's the thing. I do feel bad. Every time we've been doing this before, I would ask you some question and then cut you off mid answer because I thought it was funny.
fuck you. You're
So
gonna
here,
do it again.
no, I'm not gonna do it again. I'm not gonna do it again. Here, this time, what we'll do is it'll be really funny, right? You'll ask me a question and then I'll cut it off mid through my answer. That'll be funny. That'll be like a little trick. Come on. All right. So ask me something, Pike. Ask me something.
Alex, how do you feel about your job right now?